Hello, clinical research circlers. How are you doing? We're circling back the wagon. We're here talking with Travis Mickle, CEO of KemPharm, KMPH. Thank you so much, Travis, for coming on. We like to check in every quarter or so, every 3 months. I got to give this is a publicly traded company. I got to give the legalese. There may be forward-looking statements, blah blah blah. You want to say it better than me? Like,
Oh goodness, I usually just say, go to our website, see our disclosures. Yeah, and that should cover it, I hope.
yeah, no. This is just informal conversation. Obviously, you don't have to answer things you're not comfortable answering. But since we last spoke, we have a stars now, and people want to know if you want to share, you've shared in the past, you yourself, your children have ADHD. Are you guys taking a stars?
I have started, and I know that once kind of the things return a little bit normal, I've heard child psychs will start to adopt it more. Okay. I think here in Florida we had the whole Delta variant with COVID, which kind of re-shut down offices again a little bit, and so none of them want to change medication unless it's really bad. But mine was easy. I just tell them, hey, I know this thing works better. And so, luckily though, I'm the family guinea pig, and I can tell everybody, yeah, this is great. This is a lot better than anything I've been on in the past, including Vyvanse.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about COVID, because that's actually something I didn't think of. But you know how we're doing the focused rollouts, which is a strategy most drug companies use. I mean, you guys partner with Corium on this. So certain markets, right? You're just hitting certain markets. You're doing test case until we can get more markets on board. Has COVID slowed down the rollout because of what you just said? Televisits. I know, because I work with doctors too, and they're trying to do a lot of their visits remotely now as well. So how's that been a challenge, if it has been?
Well, we've heard from Corium that they've had their challenges. I mean, a lot of the focus has been in states like Texas and Florida, which were the epicenters for the Delta variant and a lot of the issues that happened alongside that. But what's nice is, as you're doing this rollout, you're also learning how to best, get into, to meet with physicians, to get their time outside of the office, which is kind of a new strategy, and I think very clever. I know other companies have implemented something similar, but I believe Corium's doing a good job of really planning for success as opposed to worrying about what's going on this very second.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as far as Corium is concerned, one of the questions I kept getting from the community is, do they have some kind of metrics that you guys follow when it comes to, do you have milestone expectations and how they perform versus what your expectations are?
In the early days, no. I mean, that's first 6 months, every payer is going to block this. You're going to have some high deductible plans that'll cover it, but that'll change at the beginning of the year, right, when folks have a deductible again. So this first few months will always be very low script volume. I think we've seen 60 or 70 a week, but it's trending up. Mm-hmm. What we want to see is adoption, continued use. Doctors continue to write scripts, and good clinical feedback. We want to hear doctors say, "Hey, this is working for my patients. I want to give it to more patients." It's not, when they tell us it's not in the pharmacy or I'm having formulary issues, that's a good sign. That means, we can fix those things, but the doctor really wants to have it in there and use it for his patients. So that's everything that I have heard that I can pass along, because it's, I think it's fairly standard, but at the same time, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, this is actually a topic that comes up. I wish we would have had Dr. Al-Jazirli, our oncologist, on here, because when we cover biotechs, we're always talking about, okay, when the drug's approved, doctors want to prescribe it. Insurance companies going to block it until they figure out what this is. But the doctors they get a form. I think it's authorization form or something. The staff has to fill it out. most offices have full-time people doing this, as long
Yeah.
as they're providing rationale why they're using this over the others. So have you seen that? Like, are you hearing feedback from doctors about this kind of stuff?
Actually, that's not terribly problematic. It's usually when a patient encounters difficulty, like my plan doesn't cover any of it. I have to pay $100.
Hmm.
Those sort of issues. Prior authorizations, as you mentioned, are ADHD is a lifelong diagnosis. So every insurer knows, well, if I can stop one or two of these, that's going to save me some money. And so they put in as many blocks for every medication. Corium knew that going in. Everybody who launches in the last 20 years has known that, it's going to get some resistance. But, docs are used to this for every new patient.
Hmm. And how do you feel about the launch so far? And then Monica, we'll get to you right now, and then Chris. But so far, the launch compared to your expectations, how do you feel about it?
I think it's going as planned. I mean, I'm just passing along what Corium's telling us. I've seen some good feedback. WebMD has provided some user reviews. Folks that have had scripts provided reviews on their utilization, and it's very positive. I think surprisingly, some of the feedback is around weight loss and appetite, which we knew in our clinical studies we were seeing kind of an improvement there. But hearing it from patients where, I wasn't eating before, or Johnny wasn't eating before, and now they don't have a problem, that's a big deal, because that's the number one issue with all of these stimulant medications. And that could be a real driver here in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, now that you're mentioning the patients, is there any feedback that you can share from patients and prescribers post launch this medication?
Besides what I just said, I think what some of the feedback has been that it does work throughout the day. It works well. Parents, it's a caregiver setting in one instance, but there's feedback that it worked early, and that's positive, because that's what we saw in our clinical studies. So there's no pushback from the clinical perspective, right? The data that physicians read and see is actually being demonstrated in their patients. So they're being very positive. I think the only negativity is what we always expected and what we see with payers, reimbursement, and the difficulty in prescribing.
And is there enough supply for this kind of medication? Because we know that there are a lot of patients with this condition. Is there enough supply for that?
As far as I know, I haven't heard of any supply issues. I couldn't tell you otherwise if it was confidential, but there has not been any reports of supply outages or lack of ability. I think with any sort of regional launch where you focused in a few areas, you're going to have to wait a day or so sometimes to get your script into that pharmacy. But I haven't heard of any issues, that has caused. And once it's there, then it'll be there for the next patient and so forth.
Chris, anything?
Sure.
You've been patiently waiting.
Sure. So I'm going off topic of these questions just because I'm curious. So, and I can't remember the proper terminology necessarily, but many people are complaining that KMPH dilutes their shares to raise capital. I don't know if that's termed correctly, but do you have, well, one, how is that done? And why does it reduce the price of the shares?
Well, the term dilution is, you go out and raise more money by selling a percentage of the company, right?
Sure.
You say, I'm going to sell X number of shares, which represents 5% of the company, 10% of the company, because I need more capital.
Right.
We tried to cover this as in detail as we could. And sometimes, we know what we know, but we don't convey exactly what we want to. On our last call is there has been no additional dilution since the announcement of a warrant exchange. So there were some warrants that were from a series of transactions that relisted us on the NASDAQ, got rid of our debt, and then brought in some additional capital so that we could, do the things we want to do in the future. And since we took those original warrants and did an inducement where they would trade off a large number for a much smaller number, that's been the last set of dilution. And we put in place tools that we may need to do M&A, either one way or the other, to potentially do a fundraise. But these are not in our plans, and they're not something that we have any use for at the moment. That's for sure.
Mhm.
So just to follow up. So essentially, you're selling off more of the company when you release more shares, of course. Is there splits or anything like that? And those really don't dilute the share price, right?
No, that's just math. And again, we haven't done anything dilutive in the near term and don't have any plans to. So yeah, this share split is just, you had one share, now you have 6 shares, or you have 6 shares, you have 1 share, but the math is still the same. You still have the exact same amount of money you had before in value.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In that same vein, I mean, I think it's something like 130 million in cash you guys have. And are there any plans for that? I mean, I usually don't see share buyback at a company of this market cap, but that's actually one of the questions I got. Is that in the works, or maybe acquisitions, or what are you guys thinking of doing with that? And hopefully it increases with the sales, as the sales ramp up for Staris.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always something that we have in the playbook, right? You can do a share buyback. I mean, right now I looked we're just under $9.
Yep.
We brought this money in at $6.50, so it would make no sense to use money that's more valuable cash as we have in the bank to send back at this point. Now, absolutely, is that a tool that we can use as the cash reserves increase with royalties and milestones with the agreement? I mean, that's our goal, and we talk about it with our board, and CFO and I speak about it on a regular basis because it's a great mechanism, especially if there is already demand. You're just going to exponentially help out on the other side of that. But where we want to apply that capital is to deploy it, number one, in a capital efficient way. That's been our model since I started the company. We're not going to waste money. We're going to spend it on exactly what we need to do, not overblown super scientific studies that, would win you the Nobel Prize, but don't lead to a good product. We're going to focus on adding value to our pipeline of products. So SDX and all the uses that possibly could be there. And then as well, things we have in the back, which we're evaluating, and things we don't have yet, things that we're also looking externally and saying, hey, there's some great opportunities out there in the CNS space. Let's go see if we can create some big value with those, give people milestones on a more regular basis, and really, take this to the next stage.
Yeah, we'll get to because I do want to get to the SDX and beyond. There's a lot of questions, a lot of excitement from the community. We were talking beforehand, this is a passionate group of investors. We haven't seen anything like this. We've only been doing this for about a year, reviewing biotechs, but man, this is like, there's so many people on Twitter, stock twits, jumping on this stock, and long-term shareholders. So this is like, Travis comes on here, gets to talk to you, answer some curated questions from me. We've witnessed recently the percentage of institutional ownership rise steadily. I think we're at close to 30%, if not more, institutional investor. How do you view this? Is it positive? And how important is that for continued growth in all the other things we're going to discuss now, namely SDX?
It is important. It's an important component to any healthcare institution. Honestly, every company in our stage, any company that wants to be the next big, I'd say Pfizer, but Neurocrine and Biohaven, these $9-8 billion companies. I mean, those are goal, right? We want to be a big boy someday. And so, we need good healthcare institutions behind us that are going to buy and keep their stock. They're not going to, not a hedge fund that's going to hedge against it with shorts and all sorts of, fun stuff. They're going to be holders, and then they're going to, like our previous holder, Deerfield, be very strategic. They brought us opportunities, they brought us deals, they brought us ideas, and they did market research. And a lot of these groups will do that. And then also it's kind of a gang, right? Once you get one or two more, and they just kind of pile in, and it's self-fulfilling for prophecy. They'll support the stock when it's down. They'll sing the praises when it's up, and that helps everybody in that case.
Yeah. So Ken, I guess we can talk about SUD, substance use disorder, stimulant disorder. You guys have phase 1. You're waiting on data from that, or do you have the data for this, or are you waiting on it still?
We've been getting little pieces here and there. It's so the study itself is just a phase 1 PK study where we have some PD readings on, how do you feel? How do you feel about, abuse? Is it make you high? Does it not? The standard parameters that you look for abuse liability, but also it tells you a little bit of how the product is making them feel at these doses. Now, these are doses above what we've studied before. So 240 milligrams was the top dose in our abuse studies. We started there, and we're going up to 600 milligrams. So we have little pieces along the way, but we don't have the full picture. So this population, these are stimulant addicted subjects. They know what they're doing as far as stimulant addiction, and they're not the most reliable subjects in the planet. You'll get 2 or 3 that show up, and then the next time they don't, and then they never call back or follow up. It's actually been a nightmare, but we're getting some good data. Fourth quarter is when we plan to announce everything.
Okay.
But in the interim, we are building, the case for how this is going to be developed into a product.
I've got way more questions on this, but Monica, Chris, anything here that you guys want to add?
Oh.
No.
We've got tons. So first of all, is this proof of concept study, is it on, I think we discussed last time, is it healthy volunteers, or it's actually on the indication for patients?
Because it required them to be, fairly sophisticated with stimulant use. We had to go with people that were not quite addicts, but well-experienced stimulant abusers.
Wow.
And so it's not the intended population where you're trying to take addicts and wean them off into something else. This is the population that at least starts that way. And so that's one of the difficulties we have with these studies.
So
Wow.
is this all amphetamines? Crack cocaine, all of it?
All of it. Yeah. Any stimulant. The site that we use is in Salt Lake. So there is a lot of amphetamine, methylphenidates, stuff you can get legally, but used at much higher doses and snorted and injected. But other sites would be more cocaine or methamphetamine. So all 4 of those would qualify as drugs of choice for these stimulant addicts.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I know
I can imagine how challenging it is to recruit patients for that study.
that'd be a very tough study. In the phase 2 and phase 3, we talked about this
Yeah.
in the last interview, like retention. When you do a clinical trial, retention is more important than recruitment. I think for a study like this,
Recruitment's
relatively
easy.
easier.
Yeah, to
relatively
recruit.
easy to recruit, but to retain somebody who's addicted to, meth, cocaine, crack, this is going to be challenging. Retention is always challenging. This is going to be challenging.
Extra.
Yes. I don't want to say impossible, because nothing's impossible, but I'm sure you guys have a plan for this, right? You guys realize this is going to be very challenging studies.
Yeah, and I think that's why we talked about it. I talked about it on the last quarterly call with a little more ambiguity, because we see other opportunities as maybe first in line because they're a lot easier.
Which ones?
That the KP1077 is in our pipeline. It's also the pure prodrug SDX, and it's for idiopathic hypersomnia. Now, it's a rare disease, so, recruitment, but there's a patient registry. There's enough data to know where to go. And, you're not having issues with retention. We've seen some Jazz work. They just got a product approved where, they were able to keep folks in the study and get it done in a fairly concise amount of time. So that's why I wanted to be a little more vague, because, we may still pursue that. It may be a route, but hey, if there's other opportunities that are just as big or maybe bigger, let's go after those first. And, do the ones, number one, that are going to be cheaper, faster, and lower risk, because there's nothing approved for SUD, stimulant use disorder. So
Right,
we have no precedent.
So just my opinion, but with the SUD studies, I would be recruiting from, I forget the name of the organization, but it's the sister to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where I would go and recruit, right? People who are trying to quit.
Yeah.
So they at least are on a positive path. They'd probably be more compliant with taking it and continue taking it, I would think.
I think I recall one of the protocols I've seen has been like you want at least initially, like for a phase 2 design, when you're trying to figure out what doses work best, is in clinic treatment, right? Where they're basically going to be housed in there for 6 weeks, and then you're going to monitor them probably for another 6 to 12 weeks,
Sure.
Just to get a sense for how it works. But you're right. I mean, you're going to need a big database of people to go to, and probably start with 3 or 4 times more than you want to end with. Just
Yeah,
because.
at least.
And that's a good point. That's a good point that you mentioned, that the substance use disorder or stimulant use disorder, that might be the more challenging one. And there's a lot of questions around that, particularly one. This is why I'm bringing it up now, because it's most related to this one. You previously said that you would look for a partner as soon as the data would be in. So I'm assuming you're going to try to license it, unlike Astaris, because it's specifically way more challenging to do a study like this for a small cap biotech. And like you suggested earlier, there's lower hanging fruit, maybe, rare disease, like you were saying, or other things. So is there anything that you would like to say about this, like for the investors who are a little bit concerned about what's going on with this particular indication first?
Well, so what's interesting here is the dynamic between our license agreement with Gurnett Point Capital, which is referred to in the public domain as ComAv. Also, they assigned the commercialization rights to Corium. It's all the same thing to me. I just say GPC really is the group here we have a license with. They have a right of first negotiation after we complete this first study. So we don't have to wait till phase 2 or phase 3. We put together a data package of this, phase 1 study. They get 150 days. All of this is public. It's all out there about the agreement, to evaluate it and decide if they want to do a license. And along the way, we'll negotiate economics, we'll negotiate terms, and then eventually, we'll reach an agreement during that time period, I would assume. And, that's what I was referring to about the license. They're obviously going to have some interest. This is CNS related. They got a CNS sales company that they're building, but at the same time, I can't guarantee they're going to do anything. That's up to them and how much they want to pay, whether it's enough for us to want to move forward with or not. All of those things are still TBD.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense because it's very early in the process, but you know how investors are. They look for like events. So data comes in, what happens next? Partner to license. Okay, so I understand. At least we're getting some clarity on that. And there's a lot of other things, right, for a SDX platform that you were mentioning. So
right.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, how excited are you about this?
Oh, I mean, tremendously. It's got a completely unique pharmacokinetic profile. You have the only Schedule 4 methylphenidate. I mean, that's just ridiculous to have that sort of flexibility in dosing and prescribing. And just the aura around it's a pro drug, it's less abusable. It's a great place to start. So I mentioned idiopathic hypersomnia. That's already identified. That's kind of top of our list for alternatives here. You can think about other forms of excessive daytime sleepiness that occur in like Parkinson's disease, which does, this is a major concern for these patients, where they don't have any treatment regimen to help them. And a lot of the sleepiness causes falls and other injuries. There's cognition issues in Alzheimer's. Methylphenidate has been proven to be effective there, but nobody's wanted to spend the time and effort to develop a product for that. And I think there's a lot of different areas you could expand upon. And I think I've seen this with other companies too, right? They have one drug and they go after multiple indications. They know some of those aren't going to work, and some of them might be deprioritized over the others for commercial reasons. But I just see they're just one after the other for opportunities here. Even beyond that, I mean, I could keep going if you want.
We will. Don't worry. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Monica, go ahead.
You mentioned about the Alzheimer's, and there's some mentioning about Alzheimer's disease at KemPharm. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on that side, since we know that you have a great scientific resource, Adam Smith, who had worked extensively in Alzheimer's disease. How do you make use of such a resource for your pipeline?
Well, I mean, it's great to have the team that we have, right? I've been working with some of these folks for more than 20 years. Adam has been a great addition with his expertise in Alzheimer's and co-crystals, and some of the technology went behind the work done there at University of South Florida. We also have Andy Barrett, who came to us from Salix and Cephalon, as well as a Harvard postdoc, and clinical pharmacology has been his background. Understanding all the CNS diseases and how they interplay and where we could go in the future. So we're at a great crossroads. We have this great opportunity to take our scientific knowledge and now apply it to something that with SDX and the opportunities here just could be tremendous. So, Alzheimer's is obvious because of Adam's background, but the narcolepsy, because of Andy's background, working at Cephalon on modafinil products. I mean, he knows this space. He knows all the experts. It's just been a nice transition from ADHD now into these other CNS diseases.
Yeah, no, and last time we were on, you even mentioned oncology, which we haven't heard before. Can you elaborate more on that?
I probably mentioned it just as a host of things to look at. I think we know what we're good at, and it took some time to kind of sit down and do a full assessment. We'll be discussing this more as the board approves our final kind of strategy, and we're able to push forward with, hey, this is the actionable plan, and I want everybody to hold me to it. But at this point, we know that oncology, 90% of the drugs fail, and it's probably not exactly where our expertise is. So we're going to stick in CNS, neurology, psychiatry, just because, again, we have these great resources. Why not take advantage of it?
With regards to KP879, is there any status on FDA special designation?
No status to report at this point. The FDA wants more data before they make any assessment on fast track breakthrough, but they're very encouraged by the IND. Really had very few questions. Really wanted to make sure that the protocol was safe and that we were monitoring these subjects that we're giving very, very high doses of methylphenidate prodrug to, but everything's gone well, and so I don't see any issues there.
Okay, and then also in the last interview, I just want to expand on that a little more. You were saying you were fielding calls in regards to interested companies looking to or sniffing around. All right. Could you elaborate more what kind of interest they were showing? I'm sure you've experienced a plethora of different calls. Can you just share some light with us on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice consequence of, the success we have with Astaris and even further back in our pipeline of other opportunities. And folks, I've met with over the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years, now need something for their pipeline. They want to go fill a hole. They come to us now because they look, you've proven what you can do, and it's a great label. It could be potentially a great product. So some of those discussions around product specific, like a 1077 or 879, some of them are more technology specific, where, hey, we have a product we'd like you to look at and see if you could help us with this. And then, of course, that'd be kind of a technology sort of partnership. And it's been along those lines. I just say it's more than we've ever had in the past. And I was very encouraged about that. And we'll continue to field those questions, and hopefully something comes out of that.
So I guess I'm looking at a lot of these community generated questions, and the theme seems to be, okay, we understand from the last interview, Travis is very excited about the future potential of SDX and CNS as a whole, even stretching to Alzheimer's and, like you said, maybe even oncology, although your core competency is going to be CNS, and that makes a lot of sense, especially with the team that you've put together. I guess I'm trying to summarize everyone's question into one because there's tons of them. By the way, great job on the social media, guys. You guys doing really good. I guess the essence of the question is everything on the table, or are you going to do this like on your own? For example, like an activated technology, would you ever consider like selling that, but just that? Or are you like committed to just going at it on your own, like long term, very long term?
So I mean, that's a great question, and that goes back to I'm sure there's a few guys that are still around from the 15 years ago when we started this whole thing. I am, so that works out. But yeah, everything's always on the table. I mean, this is a business first and foremost. I have friends here I've worked with for a long time, but they also understand this is has value in pieces too. So whether it's divestment or strategic alignment, or taking two parts and making it one, external company or technology we look at everything and consider all the options. And I think that's what we've been doing over the last few months. That's where we want to be. Is here's our plan. Now, it doesn't mean there won't be changes to that over time, but we want to get to the point where hey, look, there's an actionable plan, and this is our goal, is to create as much value as quickly as possible. I mean, when I started it, my goal was to sell the whole thing as soon as possible. But it's now the Iowa story. If you build it, they will come, and I'm an Iowa boy, so we're gonna have to make them really want to pay a lot of money for it before they get a hold of it.
So follow up to Dan's question, and you probably can't answer this, but any interest from the big dogs in pharma? Has anybody come forward and asked about your assets and inquired about purchasing?
Yeah, you're right. I can't really answer that. It would all confidentiality, and I get in serious trouble with my lawyers and those companies. So, I will say that just off the cuff and informally, over the 15 years, yeah, we've had offers to purchase the company, but depending on what the situation was, of course, we're here now. So we've said no. And we've always been right on the other side of that. It was just low ball offers or just not the right timing. And you know how that works.
Well, you mentioned one company that I'm fairly familiar with, Neurocrine. They went through the same process in which they had many low ball offers and turned them down, and still some offers today, to my understanding, still turning them down. So
yeah,
you want to be right there with them, I assume.
Yeah, the nice thing for everybody but a select few of us is that you can buy and sell shares as you see fit, right? So it's always great to have that exit and that great positivity. But in this particular case, Neurocrine is a great example, right? it went from what, $1 billion company to $10 billion in 5-6 years. I mean, there's just a lot of examples now where, hey, big pharma has abandoned CNS, and other companies, and why not KemPharm, can step in the shoes and say there's still unmet need. There's still people desperately in need of better treatments for depression, Alzheimer's, idiopathic hypersomnia, all these different unmet needs. And I think there's no reason why we can't be in that position.
Yeah, Neurocrine is I'm glad you guys both brought that up. That's a great case study for the KMPH hardcore nerds that are out there. I know all you nerds, KMPH nerds, you may not know about Neurocrine. You need to go study Neurocrine because Travis brought it up. Maybe that's the roadmap. In that vein, is KemPharm considering taking on full commercialization of products in the future, or is the current model going to remain the same as with Astaris?
We are considering it. As you look at things like SUD and idiopathic hypersomnia, there's no reason why you couldn't field a small sales force and keep 100% of the revenue, right? Why share this with somebody else and, put your fate in their hands? It's a great way if there's expertise or if it's a really big market like ADHD, but these small targeted markets, it makes a lot of sense. Now, we haven't made that decision officially. We don't have a commercial team, so we have to get there, but it does make a lot of logical sense.
Thank you for answering these questions
about the commercialization.
Yeah, Monica, go ahead. Ask away.
No, that was my next question about the commercialization of the medication. If they go in that road that they commercialize their own drug, obviously that's a very important point.
We're wrapping up. Thank you, Travis, for answering these somewhat tough questions. We try to make it easier. We've been unrelated to KMPH, believe it or not. We were, Chris, myself, Dr. Al, we're looking at Questive Therapeutics. But we did a few videos. I think we even had the CEO on. I can't remember. I have to look back and see. But I was surprised to find there's like a history between KMP. I mean, they're getting like 10% royalty. What's going on with that? Is that like something that is just gonna maintain itself, or are you guys thinking of doing something about that? And then can you just share like a minute of like why that even occurred?
Yeah, sure. Actually, this goes way back to the genesis of KemPharm, when Questive was actually Monosol RX. So they were, different name, kind of a similar business model at that point, making these thin strips, thin films for rapid dissolving oral delivery. When we had our first candidate, it was also an ADHD candidate, kind of a highly water soluble form of Vyvanse, new prodrug. And we approached them and said, we want to put this in a film. We think this would be a great approach. So we worked together. We got into an agreement where we co-developed this. And we eventually wanted to include SDX in that. We wanted, a methylphenidate. So, there was a lot of work and tech transfer that went in. They earned a royalty on, any of that ADHD work. We sold the first one off to Shire. So, that one, they got a percent of that as well. But, that's something that's in place. Now, as far as like deciding whether or not we're going to buy the royalty, it's kind of up to both Questive and KemPharm. I don't know if they're interested. We'll have to ask.
Yeah, they got a lot going on too. I mean, I was just surprised, like, okay, I've been covering this company and I see that they have a history. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small world in the pharmaceutical space, and they're a good company, good group of guys. I know Keith Kendall well, the CEO. So Keith, if you want to talk, just give me a call.
Keith, come on, give us a call. Let's do a group Zoom, a group podcast. That would drive Stock to its crazy. Monica, anything else? I see you want to ask something.
You're misreading her body language.
Okay. How do you guys do so good at social media? How are you guys so good? Like, this is amazing. I don't know. What is it about it? Like, I don't understand.
I wonder, we have, kind of the standard resources that I think everybody else does, right?
Yeah.
External party helps us out with managing stuff. It's a good story though, right? At the base, we have this partnership that's going to be generating revenue. We have a de-risk approach to drug development, and we can keep doing this over and over and over again. And a team who has done that. So it's always been a story that resonated with a lot of people. And then kind of once you get into it, I think, folks kind of root for us to do well. And so, that's what I believe. The truth could be something completely different.
Yeah.
I have a lot of faith in my team and the technology. And I hope that's, part of that story.
Okay. Well, I
I'm
guess.
a big fan.
Yeah, we're all big fans. So I thank you for answering these tough questions.
Yeah.
Final question. Okay, I promise.
I have one more.
All
I have
right,
one
so
more.
2 more. So you go yours first.
So this one you may want to cut out. I don't know, but
No,
just
we
because
won't edit it.
I don't understand how this works. So it's back to a previous question I had asked in regards to stock. So I assume with your initial public offering, just for an example, hypothetical, you release 10 million shares and say that's 20% of the value of the company. I assume something like that, right? With the SEC. Is that correct? Something along those lines. But when you release more shares, is it the same exact numbers, another 10 million for 20%, or can you change that? Can you say we're going to release 10 million shares, but now this is only worth 5% of the company, yet it's at the same price point as what the current market's dictating?
As far as that goes, it would have to be in the context of a fundraise. So if we sold, so many shares like we have in the past, whatever percentage that represents. So we'll use your 5 million shares versus, the 5% of the company.
Mhm.
It's the stock price at the time, multiplied by the 5 million shares. That's how much money you can raise. So say it's $8 times $5 or 5 million, and you're raising $40 million to the company.
Right.
Now you're giving those institutional investors and other investors, the shares directly, right? They didn't have to go to the market and buy them, and you're getting the money directly instead of like the transaction happening without your involvement. So you're using that to create more value, supposedly in most cases, I hope. But in this particular instance, we're not raising any money. We're not out there looking for any. We only use it in the context of what I discussed, which is if there's something very attractive external to KemPharm, as far as an asset or a company, that's when you want to implement something like that. Either you raise the money to purchase or use some of those shares to acquire. And we're not talking about like anything of any size, right? We're looking at small opportunities. We're looking at developing our own candidates with our own capital. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit.
One last follow-up question to that. So I assume you have to have clearance or at least a filing with the SEC every time you sell more shares, right?
Yes, we filed what's known as a S3 in June, which authorized a certain lump of shares. Now, if you actually have an offering, you have to file additional documents. So within that, you have to say exactly how many shares are going to be transacted. And all of that is made public almost immediately, but has to be done very quickly after you want to do that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the answer.
Thank you. And I promise, last question. Okay, Travis, if you have a crystal ball and you're looking at the end of 2022, where do you see KMPH? Where do you want to see it? And then where do you think it's actually going to be at? As far as sales for Astaris, as far as SDX pipeline, what do you think is possible?
What do I think? That's a loaded question.
I know.
I mean, I can't answer that either way without either getting in real trouble with the shareholders or the SEC. No,
rock in a hard place.
Yeah. No, I mean, the way I would like to see it, of course, is a full pipeline of opportunities with milestones that are achievable. And so folks are getting real news in, say, once or twice a quarter, where if a study is started, a study is finished, we have a pipeline that folks are see a lot of value in, which is creating value in the market cap, share price, everything. It's just a consequence of that. Do I think that's very possible? Absolutely. That's my goal number 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the rest of it, as far as sales, that's core. That unfortunately I had to sell those rights to Corium to get this great license and this great partnership. So in that particular instance, here we have an opportunity to work with them and help them. And I think it's going to be a great product. There's a lot of difficulties out there. So, do I see that being, a multi-billion-dollar product eventually? Yeah, it's very possible. But, will it happen at the end of 22? That's kind of TBD, right? We got to figure that out, and we'll watch and monitor.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but you have some magic going on with KMPH, with the community. I think the community, for the most part, like 80% of the comments got your back. So you've got something good that I would say 99% of biotechs don't have, which is like this kind of social community, which is becoming increasingly important. So any final message for them?
Yeah, I mean, I greatly appreciate that community. I've been in those shoes. I've been on the other side. Everybody wants more information. We pass along everything we possibly can. We don't keep anything more than a few minutes, really. If it's anything of use to shareholders and potential shareholders. And I appreciate their patience too. And we came through what is just like miraculous that we still exist, just with the debt we had and the financial restructure we had to do last year, get relisted. It's all been taken care of. So it's all upside from here. And I'm just so pleased to have the support of everybody, that is following. And hey, we're going to take this much further.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. Keep coming back like once a quarter. You got to do your quarterly earnings and all that, but let's make it like an informal, just get to know the CEO kind of thing every quarter.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I really appreciate you guys do a good job, moderating the questions. I know a lot of them are hard to kind of piece together and get out what it can be answered, get the information that people want to hear.
Hey, they're interested, so that's good. At the end of the day, that's good. We're YouTubers. We'll take good and bad comments. Helps the algorithm. Stock price, no different. We just want interest in it. So we appreciate it. Appreciate it, Travis, Monica, Chris. Thank you guys very much. And stay tuned to my reaction video on my channel for this. I'll do highlights for the newbies, get you guys interested, get some new people going down the rabbit hole of KMPH. But this one was special for all you nerds out there. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.